We are joined right now, as promised, by an NFL and CBS analyst, an NFL Network analyst, good friend of the program. The 2022 NFL Draft gets underway next Thursday. Charles Davis is my guest. Charles, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jim? Good to hear your voice again. Hope you and yours are doing great.
We are doing great, and it's great to hear your voice, too. So we are about a week out from the NFL Draft in Vegas. Before we get into the details of all of the projections, at this point, how settled do you feel the teams are at the very top of the draft about who they're going to take? Are they locked in, or does it still feel kind of fluid to you?
It still feels fluid to me, Jim. Obviously we're not in their rooms, and, we all talk to our different contacts. Everyone has them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this business, right? But even our contacts, and I would guess that if you would talk to other people doing what we do, I think they would all pretty much tell you the same thing. Sure, I've talked to X, Y, and Z, but none of them have been really definitive with me.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, if it goes this way, we're here. If it goes that way, and we really like, but we're not. And that's kind of how this whole draft feels right now. Not that people don't know these players. I don't want to give a false impression like everyone's just, throwing a dart up at the board. That's not it at all. It's just a matter of, okay, right at the very top, what is the first move that'll start to dictate where the rest of us go? Because Jacksonville is still a mystery. Jim, how many times have we gone into a draft we knew who was number one and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it?
Right.
It even had contracts done sometimes, right? So there was no mystery involved at all. This year, Aiden Hutchinson feels like ultimately who's going to be the pick, but I don't think that's a lock. Not yet.
Charles Davis is our guest. So, Charles, when you mentioned that, for instance, you've got Jacksonville at the top, and Aiden Hutchinson could be it. But if not him, then it's got to be Trayvon Walker, probably, you would think, from Georgia. If you're looking at that and you're looking at the two of them, who makes more sense in your mind to Jacksonville?
Well, to Jacksonville, because of where Jacksonville is coming from, their most recent history, Jim, they've had a few misses near the top of the board in the last few years, and it's not even totally just this regime, just kind of franchise. Hutchinson, quote-unquote, makes the most sense, and it's one of those terms that I don't know how you feel about it, so I'd love to get a couple words on it. But sometimes when we say this guy's the safest pick you can make, I feel like you're damning him with faint praise, and I don't think that's the case here. I think Aiden Hutchinson is a tremendous football player. But when we also call him probably the safest pick and the safe pick for Jacksonville, that should be a compliment this time, not, well, there's no one else and this guy's kind of, we think he'll be okay. He doesn't bring any drama with him. There's no off-field that we're worried about. You don't worry about his background. This kid's got all the things you want, and he's just going to come and go to work. Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, best pure pass rusher in the draft. Why is he not the number one guy, and why are we not talking about him? Because there's a little extra with him. He's a 2022 young man. Jim, he talks about brands and what's going to happen here and what's going to happen there. I know we're getting better as scouts in the NFL, but there's still plenty of old school thought. I just want kids going to come and play football. I just want them to come in and play football. Hutchinson probably gives you that. Trayvon Walker gives you that from Georgia. Thibodeau, he might scare a few people right at the top with those sorts of things, and it seems like a minor thing in 2022. Still the NFL, Jim. They still have concerns about those sorts of things. Plus, does he play hard every snap? There's always one player in every draft that we talk about like that. He's this year's edition.
Interesting. Charles Davis is joining us. All right, so I think there's such good information in that. We talked about Jacksonville. What about Detroit with that second pick overall? You were in Detroit recently, so what's your sense as to how that city is feeling about the Lions? Look, we know, I've always said this, Charles, that is a great football town. I mean, a great football town that hasn't had a ton of success, but a great football town. How are they feeling about the Lions and this draft coming off their first season with Dan Campbell?
The Lions and Cleveland are two phenomenal football cities that have deserved better over the years. No ifs, ands, or about it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And where were we last year for the draft? Cleveland. They're finally starting to get theirs, right, where the hope is real. Detroit, I was just there for the draft celebration because they're getting the draft 2024. Jim, the people that do what you and I do, right, the professional yackers, I did 2 radio shows in town. both radio shows, and there were multiple people hosting, said the same things. We want a quarterback at 2. We want Malik Willis. They both were clear about it. And they both said the same thing to me. That's what we want. Now, our fan base, they don't want that. Our fan base wants position players. And that's at 2 and 32. And remember, they also have 34. So there's a lot going on in Detroit. I expect them to take either Hutchinson or Trayvon Walker. That's what I would expect at the top. Whoever Jacksonville doesn't take, I feel like they will take the other. Hutchinson, Detroit people would dance in the streets coming from Michigan. Would the Detroit front office be upset getting Trayvon Walker? Not one bit. They see huge upside there, I think. Now, 32, that's a whole nother story because they may be able to package that one, drop back down, have someone else come in if indeed someone has the appetite to get that quarterback at 32 like we've seen in recent years. Remember Minnesota getting Bridgewater and Baltimore coming in and getting Lamar Jackson. And you get that extra year on the contract. But that's what the city of Detroit is feeling based off of the 2 shows that I did. So it'll be fun to see how that whole thing breaks down.
No doubt. Charles Davis joining us. All right, you mentioned Malik Willis. I'm looking at your mock draft. Charles, you've got Carolina, and obviously Carolina has cycled through quarterbacks ever since Cam Newton left for the first time. There's been a suggestion that they've got the inside track on Baker Mayfield, and you've got them taking Willis with the 6th pick overall. If you're Carolina, who would you rather have, Mayfield or Willis?
I've been a big Mayfield fan for a long time. I'm not a fan of what's going on recently, although he does have a point about, could someone have told me? Yes, they could have. Unfortunately, in our business, Jim, we're in the communication business, and people who communicate really poorly are usually people in the communication business. And that's kind of how it worked out, unfortunately. His hurt feelings got out on display. It probably wasn't the best thing for him because people at home don't have a whole lot of regard for hurt feelings when you're making millions of dollars. That's just the way the world works, unfortunately. He has a point, but it's not a point people are going to really get with. To me, he's a better prospect than anyone you would get in this draft if he's coming in and taking over and you don't have the rest of the drama that goes with it. So if Baker Mayfield becomes a Carolina Panther before the draft, that's a null and void pick there, Jim, at 6. Then you're back to, can they get one of the big tackles, an Ekwonu, an Evan Neal, or do you decide Charles Cross is good enough for you at 6? That would be like central casting to me. But I'm kind of, the owner's been jumping up and down about a quarterback, right? Scott Fitterer, the GM, a few weeks ago said sometimes you have to take a gamble, even in the top 10 for a quarterback. I kind of take them at their word and kind of left it there at QB. But as you pointed out, if Mayfield does get to Carolina before this draft, that pick's null and void. I have to go somewhere else and change that.
Charles Davis is joining us for a few more moments. That's interesting. For instance, if in fact Baker Mayfield is better than any prospect coming out right now, there are some interesting quarterback prospects. Of the guys coming out this year, Charles, who do you like best at quarterback?
Kenny Pickett would be my number 1 quarterback out of Pittsburgh. And again, I'm very careful about that, that faint praise thing, because this isn't faint praise, but this is something that's real. To me, he's the most advanced among all of them. And if all of a sudden your starter can't go tomorrow, you can plug him in, and I think he'd be the most efficient and get your team going right away. I think he's that far advanced amongst the others. Not to where they can't see him, but he's ahead of them, I believe. Other guys have upside. The guy that I had, kind of the man crush on is the Matt Corral of Ole Miss. I just love his playmaking ability. I love his toughness. I love how he's grown and matured during his time at Mississippi. Go all the way back to high school, Jim, and see some bumps he's had along the way and see how he's gone through them and seen this finished product that I've met on multiple occasions now that I'm just really, really like. I just think that there's an element to him. There's a lot of playmaking that goes along with him. Doesn't mean I don't like Willis. Doesn't mean I don't like Sam Howell. Doesn't mean I don't like Desmond Ridder, who I think is ascending right now. I put him in the first round with Pittsburgh, and I'm sure a lot of people want to punch me in my face. But he's the type of quarterback that Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator, would love to have to go along with what he wants to do on offense. So it's plausible I don't know if it's going to happen. But Matt Corral's the one that I'm the most crazy about in this draft.
I like him too. You're right. He went through some things in high school, but I like the way he's handled that. I like the way he's bounced back. I've had him on the program. I like what I hear. I like what I see. I agree with you. Before you go, it's a really deep receiver draft. When you break down this class of receivers, who stands out to you as the best?
Well, Jameson Williams from Alabama has been the best for me, but he's coming off the knee injury. Now, everyone's talked about how he's ahead of pace, he's rehabbed, what have you. I did have a very good scouting friend say to me the other day, hey, man, he's a straight line guy. Does he change direction as well as we want to? Well, okay, that's a possibility. But when you put it all together, Jim, I don't think you go wrong with this receiving group. I think you can make a case for all of them. Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State, Chris Olave, Ohio State. Drake London at USC is a little bit of the wild card because he's not going to blow you away with the 40. But it reminds me a little Larry Fitzgerald with the big body guy who can go into the slot and make every catch you want downfield and then shake you off and gain additional yardage running the ball. Sky Moore from Western Michigan is getting a lot of run, is maybe sneaking into the first round. Remember Dwayne Eskridge came out of there and went to Seattle a year ago. Jahan Dotson from Penn State. Jim, if you have not met him or spent time with him, if Jahan Dotson wasn't such a great football player, he should have been an Ivy Leaguer. This kid is impressive. I mean, just spend 5 minutes with him. You're like, dude, you had to have gone to Harvard, right? Did you go to Yale? Did you go to Princeton? Which one did you go to?
Right.
That's what he feels like when you talk with him. But there are a bunch of receivers in this draft. I do think Christian Watson from North Dakota State is going to be a really, really talked about prospect. 6'4", running 4.36, not a ton of balls thrown to him. He's a type you can really develop. But by the way, Jim, there will be a receiver drafted in the 4th round that's going to catch 60-plus balls next year. That's how many good receivers I think are in this draft.
That is deep. That is really deep. Charles Davis, my guest. All right, so I was going to let you go, but since you said that, I want to ask you something. If there's going to be a receiver who's taken in the 4th round that catches 60 passes, is there going to be a single running back taken in the 1st round this year?
It's funny you mentioned that, and I'll be brief on it. One of my favorite people in the NFL is a player personnel person. I was doing a show last night, and he texted me and said, for the life of me, I cannot understand how a Breece Hall or a Kenneth Walker is not taken in the 1st round. That's what he texted to me.
Interesting.
Now, those were his words. I will tell you that in doing my mock drafts, there have been plenty of passes that I've done at them, and Breece Hall is in my 1st round that I've not submitted, and I'm eyeing Buffalo.
There you go. He is an NFL and CBS analyst. He is an NFL Network analyst. He is a friend of the program, and the draft finally is just about here. It's next Thursday. In fact, Charles Davis is all over it. My man, great to have you back on the show. Appreciate you, and always appreciate that conversation, especially this time of year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As always, Jim, always appreciate the conversation. Always good to talk to my teammate.
My guy, Charles Davis, appreciate you so much. CBS fam right there.